Socrates, this philosopher who everyone knows, he was sentenced to death actually. Did you know that? Philosophers were the most knowledgeable people back then, because all they did is thought about things and questioned things and thought about the world and all that. And so Socrates thought that the meaning of life was actually to know things, the knowledge, the learning was the meaning of life. And he said that an unexamined life is not worth living. And one day his friend went to the oracle, this all-knowing being who knows the future and knows everything. Maybe you have seen it in the 300 film, the oracle. The oracle said that Socrates was the wisest man in the world. And Socrates couldn't believe it. He started to go around the town and asked people about things and questioned them, and he realized that they don't know anything. But he also realized that he himself doesn't know anything. So he must be just a little bit more knowledgeable than them, because he realizes that he doesn't know anything while the other people think they know something. And so that's why he was really knowledgeable and the wisest, basically. And he started to go around and just question people and try to teach them in this annoying way. Like he went around and asked people like, sorry, mister, what is justice? Could you help me with that? And when the person gave his definition or his thoughts about justice, he just questioned him and showed him that he was wrong and all that. And basically that's what he did for 70 years of his life. He went around and tried to make people realize if they don't know something, and try to basically know things about the world by questioning them to their basis to get to the truth. And he did that to people, and he did that to everyone, like leaders and politicians, and not just the common folk. He might have gotten a couple of enemies in his 70 years of life because of that. And when he was 70, the political climate and the social climate wasn't really stable, because that was the time where the Persians fought the Spartans and stuff, and there was this leadership change in politicians. He was basically then accused in this climate of corrupting the young and denying the gods of the state, because the one thing he did is he said sometimes to people that there was this angel with him who gave him advice and said things to him, and that might be dangerous, because at the time all this god thing was really taken seriously, and maybe you don't want to go around and say stuff like, you have an angel around who said things to you. Corrupting the young, I don't know. But he was accused with that and taken to trial. And the trials back then were of two parts. First, they decide if you are guilty, and second, they decide what your punishment should be if you're guilty. And Socrates didn't defend himself, actually. He just continued what he did all his life, which was just questioning things, and he just argued about the ridiculousness of the things he is accused with, like corrupting the young. Why would I do this? Corrupting is harming someone, and if I harm young people, they could easily just beat me up because I'm weak, and it doesn't make sense. He basically didn't argue for himself, just continued this maybe a little bit annoying thing that he did. And he was found guilty, and you would think that when he's found guilty, then he would change his mind and maybe try to defend himself, because at that point a penalty of death is on the table. He could die. The court, the jury, the people asked him, well, Socrates, what do you think? What you should get as punishment? And Socrates said, well, for my services and for me teaching people and questioning people, I think you should give me free food for life, and you should thank me. And this was after he was found guilty. And the free food for life thing was actually a prize that Olympic winners get at the time. So it was a pretty big pretty big joke, if you could call it that, from his side. Yeah, so he just went on and questioned stuff and said that, well, the fear of death is ignorance, because you don't know nothing about death. It might be the greatest thing, like end of suffering and all that. Like fearing death is ignorance and stuff like that. And by the end, he was sentenced to death. And the interesting thing is that more people sentenced him, voted for him to die, than who voted for him to be guilty. Like, so meaning that some people who thought he was not guilty at first, by the end of the trial, wanted him dead. That's how good. That's how good he behaved himself. So yeah, and he could easily defend himself. Like, he was a really good arguer. He was a really good philosopher, really good questioner. The court back then was basically who can argue better. There was actually a philosophical school, I don't know, the sophists, who taught everyday people to argue at court and to win court cases just by arguing. So it was, you know, by using common techniques like discrediting the sources of information and pointing out the opposing things that the opponent said and stuff like that. So you could win court cases if you were intelligent and could argue, and Socrates could real easily win the case, but he just refused to do it out of principle. So he basically died for what he believed in, and that's a really brave thing to do, and a really interesting way to think about life, that you believe in things to the point that you would die for them. And yeah, if you want to hear more stories like this about philosophy and philosophers and the past and all the thoughts about how things were in the past, then you are lucky, because there's a podcast called Philosophize This from Stephen West that you can listen to basically on every podcast platform like Google Podcasts and stuff like that. And he makes philosophy and philosophers really interesting, and yeah, it's just really good. He has hundreds of episodes, and he's really knowledgeable about this thing, and he's a really good storyteller. So yeah, if you're interested in that, then go away